I wanted to share the story with everybody in different countries really about the compulsory purchase orders of homes in the UK in order for them to be given to illegals and asylum seekers. You'll forgive me if you're British and you already know this story because we're kind of starting to hear about it. And you'll forgive me if I explain things at such a level of detail, but I think it's really important, aside from the noise and the outrage, to just explain and detail exactly what's happening in the UK with properties. So homes in the UK that can be labelled derelict for any reason. Somebody in authority in a council decides that a property is derelict, you can then be given a compulsory purchase order from the local council who will purchase that home because it is considered, unhelpful to the local environment if there's properties that are lying derelict or unkept. And I'm just reading that from Northamptonshire Council's actual letter. It's their own letter I have here. And of course, many of us rational and reasonable people would agree with that. I wouldn't want to live next to an empty property. You'd much rather it had a little family in it or somebody in it looking after it, wouldn't you? But let's go on 20, 30 years from when maybe that was first thought about or first put into legislation. Now we're at the point where councils in the UK are using compulsory purchase orders in order to force British people out of their homes and replace them with approved asylum seekers, or as I would say in my terminology, illegals. The example that I'm just going to take us through is the example that some British people will already be aware of. A lovely man and a lady aged 76 and 78 who received a letter through their door of their home from Northamptonshire Council. I have the letter. Empty Properties and Sites Initiative. And it goes through and explains to them how it's unhelpful if there's a derelict or empty property. It's better for the neighbourhood and communities if these properties are purchased and have people living in them. But there's a really key paragraph where at present we are seeing a considerable increase in, get this, positive immigration decisions being made in favour of asylum seekers. I mean, that is such a loaded sentence, regardless, because if you were neutral, you would say at present we're seeing an increase in the number of approvals of asylum seeking cases, right? You would document the facts of the things, which is that more and more asylum seekers are being approved because the government just needs to process these people, and frankly it doesn't care who it's letting in. And if you want me to detail examples of exactly how that's gone wrong, well, we've had two in the last week, one involving a woman being doused in alkali and virtually dissolving in her own car. Regardless, they're saying it is positive immigration decisions. That means there's lots and lots, essentially it's what it's saying here, of young single men, once they're granted refugee status, they're given 28 days to leave Home Office provided accommodation and apply for benefits, find work and source move on accommodation. Due to this limited time frame and increases in private rents, the council is struggling to source suitable accommodation. And they're saying that the ideal solution would be to provide accommodation by using people's homes. Now, this letter landed on the doorstep of this 76 and 78-year-old lovely British couple. And they'd moved to the area to help look after their grandchild, whatever. And it was actually sent, now the council is saying it was sent in error, that they should never have received it. But there's many layers to this. Let's say it was just an accident. Oh, it was just that. They shouldn't have received the letter. Don't worry about it. But that isn't the story, of course. The truth is that a 76-year-old and 78-year-old man and a woman been in this country their whole life were made to feel, they read this as a letter to them from the council telling them that because their property would be identified as derelict or could be identified as derelict, it could be the subject of a compulsory purchase order because they needed space to shove these illegals into. And for a full 3 days until someone did something about this and they were told it was a mistake, they had this letter and believed they might be being forced out of their own home in their own country. The second point, and I think possibly more important point, is that whether it was an accidental letter or not, this lovely couple have said, wait a minute, how is this even a policy in our country? How is it that they want to take ordinary people out and shove illegals in? They didn't realise this was going on in this country. And of course, the majority of people don't, or would prefer to do what will happen in the comments here, which is call me a liar or call me any of the names I'm called, too old to have an opinion, horse face, call me a man, any of the things that people say when they just want to shut the person up who's been telling the truth for the last 15 years. That's not the point. The point is that this lady and gentleman have been shocked because they didn't appreciate that this sort of thing was happening under our very noses. Of course, many of us who are awake have known this all the time. We know that there is only a limited amount of time that people will still own private property. It's why young people can't buy private property. The age of owning private property will be over. You will own nothing. And they mean it. And that timeline is not far away. And then something else as well. It's this timeline idea that when that legislation that said, look, it's not great to have homes lying empty because it encourages, you know, crime, or it encourages people to ransack those homes, or it's just not as safe or whatever, or it's nice to have people around. When that legislation was made up, it was done for people's good, you know, do no harm, government for the people, by the people, your vote is lending your support to a government, and it will enact policies that should support you, your freedoms, your right to life, your right to liberty if you're American, and your right to pursue happiness. And then in this short period of time, it's now become a way of forcing people out of their homes. So it was about making sure that in your home you were happy and you were safe and your neighbourhood was nice. Within a decade or two, it's become, we can force you out. We can say your home is derelict, or we're going to decide this whole street is derelict and you're all gone. And then if you carry that along, you know, so somewhere else down the line, where it's not going to need to even be derelict, or there won't need to be some imaginary excuse. You won't need to fabricate a cover story. It will just be dictated. This whole cul-de-sac, this whole street, this whole area is gone. It's now asylum seeker accommodation, or it's just bulldozed to the ground. This is coming. And we know it's coming because you can see it in every single thing that's happening, and every single way that homeowners are being forced and screwed out of their homes, mortgages going up, the cost of living going up, people unable to pay their mortgages, forced out of their homes, forced into rental, forced into accommodations that are flexible. They can be pushed and cajoled. It's the carrot and the stick. Squeeze people with the stick, entice them into city centres. And you'll see that for the next, 5 years until we're officially removed from the places in which we live. But regardless, the point is, and I think particularly from an international perspective, and particularly for our lovely American friends, is that this is a real thing here in the UK, where we're much further down a dark path than you are. And we are already seeing the paperwork, whether it was delivered by accident or not, that says an improvement in asylum seeker immigration policy means that more asylum seekers are being taken on, and therefore you have to be forced out of your home. British people will be forced out of their homes with compulsory purchase orders. And if you think I'm imagining this, if our South African friends are listening, and you'll know I've spent a lot of time sleeping on the farms of South Africans, expropriation without compensation. Look to the farmers. There's evidence all around you. Doesn't even have to be a compulsory purchase order. If you're a South African farmer, expropriation without compensation, that's a lot of syllables that says we're stealing your land, your home, your everything, your grandfather's land. And for farmers, expropriation of farmland. We're stealing your livelihoods, the livelihood that your father left you and the future you hoped for your children. It's already here. It's already all around us. So to my critics, you can rubbish me and call me names all you want. But as with so many things over the last 15 years, it gives me no pleasure to see that history is now moving so fast that you get proven to be right every single day. So beware. Enjoy. If you own your own home, please know you're probably one of the last generations of normal, ordinary people who will be allowed to do that. In future, only the landed old wealth will have such a privilege.